After the father passed away, a young woman adopted a golden retriever to help her cope with the grief. On her wedding day, she breaks down in tears as she uncovers a truth about the dog. Anna took a deep breath, glancing around at the guests filling the small church. The low hum of chatter and distant laughter filled the air, but to her, everything seemed a bit blurry. Only seconds remained before she'd walk through those doors, down the aisle, in the white dress she'd dreamed of since she was a little girl. Her heart raced, not only from excitement but from something she couldn't quite explain. She felt a sudden urge to step away, just for a moment, before facing what would likely be the biggest day of her life. Slowly, Anna moved from the crowd, heading toward the quiet garden behind the church, searching for her loyal companion, Coca. There he was, lying under the shade of a tree. Coca, her golden retriever, had come into her life unexpectedly, becoming her confidant, her closest friend, and her anchor through her darkest times. "Hey, Coca," Anna whispered, a tired smile crossing her face as she knelt beside him, gently stroking his soft golden fur. The dog lifted his head, his gentle eyes meeting hers in a way that always brought her peace. Just like so many other times, Anna felt that Coca understood her more deeply than she'd ever realized. "You know," she continued, "today's the big day. They say it's the start of a whole new life." Instead of just staying by her side as usual, Coca leaned in close, resting his head against hers in a way that took her by surprise. It was such a simple touch, yet filled with meaning. Anna froze, a rush of memories flooding her mind. That little gesture. It was just like what her dad used to do. Anna's heart skipped a beat. She felt a surge of nostalgia mixed with a familiar ache pulling her back into the past. Clear as day, she could remember the afternoons when her dad, with a warm smile, would lean in to touch his forehead to hers. It was as if that gentle gesture said everything words couldn't express. The memory of her father hit her hard. The happy moments they shared before the accident came rushing back. Then the tragedy. The mountain, the cold wind, his last shout. The guilt that had never left. She closed her eyes, trying to hold back the tears, but it was no use. Everything was coming back. The loss, the emptiness. And now, this strange feeling that somehow Coca had been with her in a deeper way than she ever realized. She pulled back from Coca slowly, her breathing quickening. Something within her clicked, like she was finally starting to understand a truth she had never fully faced. When she opened her eyes, the present began to blur. The distant voices of the guests faded away, and suddenly, Anna wasn't in the church garden. She was somewhere else, in a different time. 6 years ago, the snow covered the landscape, stretching out in a blanket of white as far as the eye could see. Anna had never felt so alive. It was her first ski trip, and excitement pulsed through her veins. Since she was a kid, she'd dreamed of gliding across the snow, feeling the speed, the freedom, the icy air hitting her face, and that day had finally arrived. "This is my treat before your big exam," her dad had said with a mischievous smile. Anna looked at him, her eyes shining with gratitude. Her dad had always been her hero, her safe place. Despite the long hours he put in at the family restaurant, he always found time for her, her dreams, and her little wishes. When they reached the mountain, Anna couldn't contain her excitement. As soon as she stepped out of the car, she ran to the snow, laughing, throwing snowballs into the air. She felt invincible. Her dad, as always, watched silently, a calm smile on his face, soaking in her happiness. After a quick lesson on how to use the skis, Anna was off on the trail, so excited she barely listened to her dad's cautions about the dangers. But it didn't matter. In her mind, she was in her own world, a world of pure freedom. Soon enough, she slipped on her headphones, cranking up her favorite song. The outside world disappeared entirely. Those first few minutes were perfect. The wind whipped her face, her heart beating wildly, but with a joy that was everything she'd hoped for. She wasn't thinking about anything except the feeling of gliding on snow. It was exactly what she'd dreamed of. But the freedom also made her careless. Lost in the thrill, she began to stray from the safe path, unknowingly veering into a more dangerous area on the mountain. Oblivious to it all, Anna kept moving, her music and speed drowning out any awareness of the real world around her. Her father had been watching her from a distance. At first, he was simply smiling, enjoying the sight of her so happy. But soon, he realized something was wrong. Anna was headed toward a dangerous area near the mountain's edge where one wrong step could be fatal. His heart skipped a beat. He called out to her, yelling, but she didn't hear him. The gap between them widened with each passing second, and fear gripped him. There was no time to waste. Without a second thought, he pushed off on his skis, his heart pounding in his chest. As he closed the distance, fear consumed him. What if he didn't make it in time? What if he couldn't stop her? But only one thought drove him forward. He wouldn't lose her. Not today. Suddenly, Anna felt a strong jolt hit her body. It was her dad. Somehow, he'd managed to reach her just in time, throwing himself between her and the cliff's edge. Anna hit the ground, dazed but safe. However, in the chaos, her father lost his balance, and before he could react, he slipped toward the edge. "Dad!" Anna screamed with all her might, but it was too late. She watched as he disappeared, her heart shattering into 1,000 pieces. Time seemed to stand still. She stumbled to the edge, trembling with fear, her legs barely able to hold her up. All she could hear was the echo of her own scream, mixed with the wind whipping through the air. She could barely breathe. With shaking hands, she pulled out her phone and called for help, her voice cracking with panic. What if they didn't arrive in time? The cold from the snow crept through her skin, but nothing compared to the chill in her heart. The steady hum of the hospital machines was the only sound filling the silence between Anna and her mother. Time in that place seemed to have stopped, as if the world outside, with its sunny days and busy streets, no longer existed. Anna sat still in the small waiting room, her gaze fixed on the cold, grey floor tiles. Each passing second sank her deeper into a feeling of emptiness and hopelessness. Her father, the man who had always been her protector, her guide, now lay in a hospital bed, hovering between life and death. And it was all because of her carelessness, Anna thought, swallowing the lump in her throat. The guilt was overwhelming, so heavy she could barely breathe. Just the day before, the doctors had delivered news Anna never wanted to hear. Her father had suffered a severe brain injury, and though he was alive, the chances of him waking up or recovering were slim. The diagnosis was clear. If he survived, he'd remain in a permanent vegetative state. Anna had felt the ground drop beneath her feet when she heard those words. Iduna, her mother, hadn't slept in days. Her usually calm face was now lined with the pain of endless worry. Her eyes seemed empty, lifeless, and her slumped posture revealed the heavy burden she was carrying. Anna watched her mother from the corner of her eye, feeling a distance between them that had never been there before. "Anna?" Iduna finally broke the silence, her voice trembling. It was weak, as though each word took enormous effort. "I've been thinking about what the doctor said. We can't go on like this." Anna looked up, not fully grasping what her mother was implying. "What do you mean?" she asked in a barely audible voice, though she already sensed the answer. Iduna took a deep breath, trying to gather strength. "The doctor. He said the best thing for your father would be to let him go. He isn't going to wake up, Anna. We can't keep watching him suffer like this." Her voice broke at the end, and Anna felt a chill run down her spine. "No," Anna replied, disbelief thick in her voice. "No, Mom, you can't mean that. Dad's going to get better. He's always been strong. I'll take care of him. I don't care if he can't walk, if he can't talk. I just want him here, with us." Iduna shut her eyes tightly, a silent tear sliding down her cheek. She knew this conversation was inevitable, but hearing her daughter speak that way only shattered her heart more. "Anna," she said softly, "this isn't living. Your father wouldn't want to be hooked up to machines, unable to move, unable to speak. He'd want us to remember him as he was, not as he is now. I already signed the papers." Anna felt her world collapse. She had already signed them. Everything inside her froze. She looked at her mother, eyes filled with tears, searching for any sign that this was a mistake, that it was just a misunderstanding. "How could you?" Anna murmured, unable to stop the tears spilling down her face. "How could you make that decision without me? I was ready to take care of him. I'd do it, Mom. I'd do it for him." Iduna sobbed, unable to hold her daughter's gaze any longer. It had been the hardest decision of her life, but deep down, she felt it was the right thing to do. She had talked to the doctors, spoken with friends and family. They all told her the same thing: let her husband rest. But hearing the desperation in Anna's voice broke the wall of pain she'd been trying so hard to keep intact. "I don't want him to suffer any more, Anna," Iduna said, her voice trembling. "We love him, but we can't keep holding on to him like this. It's not fair to your dad." Anna couldn't listen any longer. Pain and anger clouded her vision. She stood up from her chair and rushed into the hospital hallway, needing air, needing to escape the crushing reality around her. Hours later, Anna found herself sitting by her father's bedside. The soft beeps of the monitor and the sound of the machines were the only noises breaking the silence in the room. Her mother sat beside her, holding her hand, both their eyes red from crying. The doctor entered quietly, a nurse following behind him. Anna knew what they were there to do. This was it. Iduna squeezed Anna's hand, but Anna couldn't bring herself to return the gesture. Her gaze was fixed on her father's face, peaceful but unnervingly still. The man who had protected her all her life, the man who had given everything for his family, lay there motionless, unable to ever smile at her again. "I'm so sorry," Iduna whispered, her voice barely audible as the doctor began disconnecting the machines. Anna didn't reply. She only watched her father, listening as the sounds of the machines gradually faded, leaving behind a deep, heart-wrenching silence. A year had passed since that day her father had said his final goodbye, but the pain still lingered in every corner of her heart, and with each passing day while the world moved forward, Anna felt as though her life was frozen in time, trapped in that hospital moment when her last connection to her father had slipped away with the sound of the machines. Even though she had started college, Anna couldn't find joy in anything. Classes passed in a blur. She couldn't focus. Her friends gradually drifted away, unable to understand the depth of her grief. But the worst part was the growing distance between her and her mother, Iduna. Since her father's passing, it was as though an invisible wall had risen between them. Her mother, always the practical one, had moved on with an icy calm that Anna couldn't understand. It was like Iduna wanted to bury the past, to forget the pain. But Anna couldn't. She didn't want to forget. One afternoon, Iduna invited her to go shopping. It wasn't something they often did, but Anna agreed, hoping that spending time together might help bring them closer. They went to a store downtown where warm lights shone over the products, and the aisles bustled with people talking, laughing, and moving about, oblivious to the weight Anna felt on her chest. While Iduna browsed through some clothes, Anna's attention drifted to the nearby display windows. In the corner of the street, she noticed a pet shop. At first, she didn't think much of it, but something made her stop. A small golden retriever with a shiny golden coat was sitting in the shop window. Its big, soulful eyes looked straight at her. Anna froze, feeling an inexplicable connection. It was as if the puppy recognized her, as if she could see something deeper in its gaze. "Anna, where did you go?" Iduna's voice pulled her out of her trance. Anna looked at her mother, who had come over with a slight frown. "Look, Mom, did you see that puppy?" Anna pointed, a slight smile on her face, the first she'd allowed herself in months. Iduna made a disapproving face. "You know I don't like animals, especially dogs. We don't have the time or space for that." Anna didn't push it, but something inside her couldn't let go of the little golden retriever. After that day, the memory of the puppy lingered in her mind like a small seed growing slowly. A few days later, on her way home from college, Anna was walking her usual route when she felt something soft brush against her legs. She looked down, and there he was, the same golden puppy, wagging his tail excitedly. It was him, the same dog she'd seen at the pet shop. Anna's heart started to race. "What are you doing here, little guy?" she whispered, kneeling down to pet him. The puppy leaned into her touch, moving closer, as if he'd been waiting for her. The bond she'd felt in the store was now even stronger. Anna knew she couldn't just leave him. The puppy looked at her with a mix of innocence and devotion that she couldn't ignore. Without overthinking it, she picked him up and started walking toward home. With each step, she felt a mix of excitement and fear. She knew her mum wouldn't approve of her bringing the dog home, but she also knew she couldn't abandon him. Something connected her to him, something she couldn't explain. When she got home, Iduna was in the kitchen, busy with chores. Anna walked in cautiously, the puppy cradled in her arms, anticipating the inevitable confrontation. "What's that?" Iduna asked, not even turning around, already sensing the presence of the little dog. "Mum, I found this puppy on the street. I think we should keep him." Anna's voice was soft but determined. Iduna turned, her eyes landing on the puppy, who looked up at her with the same intense gaze he'd given Anna. "Anna, you know we can't have a dog here. We don't have the time to take care of it, and—" Before Iduna could finish, the puppy started barking. A soft but insistent bark directed right at her. Iduna took a step back, surprised by the puppy's reaction. Just then, a cracking sound filled the air. The ceiling fan, which had been loose for weeks, suddenly detached and crashed down right where Iduna had been standing only moments before. Iduna was speechless. Anna, too. Both of them stared at the puppy, who continued to watch Iduna with an almost protective expression. "Oh my God," Iduna murmured, putting a hand on her chest. "If you hadn't moved." Anna knelt down next to the puppy, stroking him with gratitude. He had saved them. Still in shock, Iduna looked from Anna to the dog. "I guess we can give him a chance," she said finally, with a resigned sigh. Anna smiled, feeling a weight lift from her chest. She couldn't explain what had just happened, but she knew this puppy had come into her life for a reason. Time passed slowly after Coca came into Anna's life. What initially seemed like a temporary companion had become her constant shadow. Coca followed her everywhere, and over time, his presence began to heal the invisible wounds Anna carried from her father's death. Every morning, Coca would wait patiently by Anna's bedroom door, and as soon as she opened it, he greeted her with bright eyes and a wagging tail, radiating an energy that made her feel less alone. It was as if he understood each of her emotions, knowing exactly when she needed comfort or just someone by her side. Anna decided to name him Coca in honor of her dad. Her father's favorite drink had always been an ice-cold Coca-Cola. She remembered their afternoons together on the porch when he'd come home exhausted from work, sit in his favorite chair, crack open a Coca-Cola, and motion for her to join him. Those moments of quiet, only interrupted by the soft fizz of the soda, were now some of her most treasured memories. Coca, the puppy, often lay down in that very chair, as if he knew it was special. At first, Anna couldn't help but shed a tear seeing the puppy nap where her father once sat. But over time, that sight became a source of comfort. It felt as if her father was still there, in some way. Even Iduna, who had initially resisted having a dog in the house, started to warm up to him. Coca, would follow her around the kitchen, watching curiously as she tried to keep the family restaurant tradition alive. After her husband's passing, Iduna had decided to reopen the taqueria, serving tacos al pastor, which her husband had founded. But since then, things hadn't been going well. The customers who once filled the tables were coming less frequently, and the tacos didn't taste quite the same. Her husband had taken the secret to their success with him. He was the one who had the touch for tacos, Iduna would mutter, frustrated. Anna tried to help, suggesting new ingredients and variations, but every attempt ended in disappointment. One day, as they worked in the kitchen, Anna decided to try a new combination of spices. She was focused, carefully measuring each ingredient, when Coca, full of energy, began playfully darting around the kitchen, weaving between her and her mother's legs. The dog, ever curious, bounced and wagged his tail with such excitement that he accidentally knocked over a Coca-Cola bottle that was sitting on the table. The bottle, with the cap slightly loosened, fell to the floor, spilling its contents all over the marinade Iduna had prepared for the meat. "Coca!" Anna exclaimed, surprised. Her mother, on the verge of scolding the puppy, paused, staring at the marinade now soaked in Coca-Cola. Anna expected Iduna to be angry, but what she saw on her mother's face was something entirely different. A look of revelation. Iduna leaned over the mixture, stirring slowly as she watched the fizzy soda blend with the spices, and suddenly her eyes widened. It was like she had remembered something buried deep in her memory. "Anna, I think this is what your dad used to do," Iduna said, her voice soft but filled with emotion. Anna looked at her mother, initially not understanding, but as she watched Iduna carefully continue stirring, the pieces began to fall into place. That spilled Coca-Cola wasn't just an accident, it was the missing ingredient. "Your dad always had a bottle of Coca-Cola nearby when he prepared the meat," Iduna recalled, her voice trembling slightly. "I never realized it could have been part of his recipe." They decided to go ahead and use that mix for the tacos al pastor meat. When the meat was ready, Iduna and Anna nervously took their first bites. Anna closed her eyes as she tasted it, and immediately a wave of memories washed over her. It was the same flavor, exactly the taste her father had perfected over the years. "This is it, Mom," Anna exclaimed, excited. "It's Dad's flavor. We found it again." Tears welled up in Iduna's eyes. They had finally found what they had been searching for. And what was most amazing was that Coca, the dog, had somehow led them to this moment. The taqueria blossomed once again. News spread quickly around the neighborhood that the tacos al pastor had their original flavor back, and soon the tables were filling up with happy customers. Iduna and Anna worked side by side, with Coca always close by, watching over the kitchen like a silent guardian. As time went on, Coca grew into a big, strong dog. No longer the small puppy Anna had picked up from the street, he had an imposing presence now, yet he still had that warm, attentive look that Anna cherished. Coca wasn't just a loyal companion, he was a protector for Anna and her mom, Iduna. It seemed he had a natural instinct to sense danger, and his loyalty to them was unbreakable. Thanks to rediscovering the secret ingredient, the taqueria continued to thrive. The place that once felt empty and lifeless was now alive with laughter, satisfied customers, and the mouth-watering aroma of meat roasting on the spit. Every plate Anna and her mother served seemed to carry a piece of her father's legacy, and Coca, always nearby, had become part of this new life they were building. But one rainy afternoon, something unexpected happened. The sky had been overcast since early morning, and by noon, a storm was raging through the small town. Torrential rain poured down without pause, and soon water began seeping through the doors and windows of the restaurant. Anna and her mother were busy moving furniture and making sure the kitchen supplies stayed dry. The storm was deafening, and they were so focused on preventing the flood from reaching the taqueria that they didn't notice a much bigger danger. Coca, who had been resting in his usual corner, suddenly jumped up and started barking non-stop. His barks were filled with urgency, which made Anna stop what she was doing and look at him with concern. "What's wrong, Coca?" Anna asked, trying to figure out what was alarming him so much. Coca continued barking, but now he was staring intently at the ceiling. Anna looked up, but with the noise of the storm and the chaos around them, she couldn't see what Coca was trying to warn her about. It wasn't until a few moments later, when she focused her gaze, that she saw it. A loose electrical cable hanging dangerously over the water pooling on the floor. "Mom!" Anna screamed, her voice cracking with panic. Iduna, who was in the kitchen, hadn't seen the cable and was still moving dishes and utensils around, unaware of the imminent danger. Anna rushed over and grabbed her arm just as the cable was about to drop. The two of them hurried upstairs, their hearts pounding, realizing how close they had come to disaster. The combination of water and electricity on the floor would have been deadly. They took shelter on the upper floor, trembling with fear and holding each other, waiting for the worst. But, to their surprise, nothing happened. The cable fell into the water, but there were no sparks, no terrifying sound of electrical surges. Both stood in silence, their breaths quick and shaky as the storm continued to rage outside. Then, they heard another sound coming from the kitchen. It was a sharp noise, like something breaking. Cautiously, Anna went down the stairs, with Coca closely following, no longer barking but still alert. When she reached the kitchen, she saw a few dishes had fallen to the floor, but her focus quickly shifted to something more important. The main breaker switch had been turned off. Coca walked over to the breaker panel and sat beside it, wagging his tail calmly, as if everything was under control. Anna stood there, puzzled. There was only one possible explanation. Someone had turned off the power before the cable hit the water. But that didn't make sense. No one had touched the switch, at least not that she had seen. Iduna, who had come down right after Anna, looked on in equal disbelief. Only she and her late husband knew about that breaker. They kept it hidden in a small compartment behind a cabinet to prevent anyone from switching it by accident. Until now, Anna hadn't even known it was there. How did this happen? Iduna murmured, still in shock. Anna looked at Coca, who was still sitting calmly by the switch, and a strange feeling washed over her. It wasn't the first time Coca had seemed to know more than an ordinary dog should. He'd shown it from the very beginning, from his perfectly timed arrival, and now he'd done something beyond logical explanation. But Anna kept her thoughts to herself, though she couldn't shake the feeling that somehow Coca was connected to her father. Iduna didn't press further, but that evening, as they sat exhausted in the living room with Coca resting at Anna's feet, the thought lingered in the air. Anna gently stroked her dog's head, feeling the softness of his fur beneath her fingers, and remembered how Coca had come into their lives at the exact moment they needed him most. A protector, a guardian, who seemed to understand them more deeply than anyone would expect. Coca's sudden bark pulled Anna back to reality. She was behind the church, just moments before her wedding. All she felt was the weight of her memories. Coca, her loyal golden retriever who had been her companion for so many years, looked at her with those deep, knowing eyes that always seemed to understand more than he could ever say. From the first day she found him, something about him had felt familiar, something that went beyond a simple bond between a person and a dog. Now, on the verge of one of the most important moments of her life, that feeling returned stronger than ever, like a truth she could no longer ignore. Anna slowly knelt down to Coca's level, her fingers trembling as she stroked his golden fur. How could she explain it? He'd been just a puppy when she found him, yet he'd shown a loyalty and understanding far beyond the usual. He had been there in every crucial moment, as if he had arrived to protect her, to watch over her, just as her father had done when he was alive. A wave of memories crashed over her. Afternoons with her father at the taqueria, walks in the park, shared smiles as he guided her through every step of life. All of it had vanished with his death, or so she had believed. But now, she wondered if he'd never really left at all. "Dad?" Anna whispered, her voice barely audible, carrying years of emotion she had kept inside. A gentle breeze brushed her face, and for a moment, she felt as if time had rewound. It was like she was speaking to her father again. Coca tilted his head slightly, and his dark, soulful eyes seemed to answer her without a single word. Anna couldn't hold it back any longer. The knot in her throat released, and the tears she had kept hidden for so long began to fall down her cheeks. "Is it you?" she asked, knowing deep down she wouldn't receive a direct response, yet unable to silence the question she had tried to avoid. Could it really be that Coca was more than just a dog? Had a part of her father, his spirit, his unending love, come back to be with her? Without making a sound, Coca moved closer, pressing his head gently against Anna's shoulder in the exact same way her father used to when she needed comfort. It was the same touch, the same tenderness. Anna closed her eyes, feeling a mix of joy and sorrow. Maybe it was both. "Dad," she whispered again, and though she knew there wouldn't be a verbal response, Coca's simple gesture was enough. The dog, with his calm and steady presence, nestled against her chest as if he knew exactly what Anna needed in that moment. A silent embrace, a connection beyond words, beyond the physical world. Anna cried uncontrollably, clinging to Coca's fur as if she would never let go. It felt like all the pain she'd bottled up for years was finally finding its release. But amidst the sorrow, she felt something else too. A calm, a peace she hadn't felt since her father passed. "Tell me it's you." "Please," Anna sobbed, as if her words could make Coca speak, confirming what her heart already believed. She knew it was impossible, knew she wouldn't get an answer, but it didn't matter. Coca was there, and that was enough. The dog lifted his head slightly, looking at her with those warm, understanding eyes, as always. He didn't need to say a word. In that moment, Anna felt as if, in some mysterious way, her father was right there with her, watching over her just like he always had. Maybe not in body, but in spirit, in the bond between father and daughter that couldn't be broken. Coca leaned his head gently against Anna's shoulder, and for a moment, the world stood still. Anna let the tears flow, but this time they weren't just tears of sadness. They were tears of acceptance, of understanding, of a love that had never left her. She didn't know how long she had been there, wrapped in that quiet hug with Coca, but when she finally looked up, the sun was beginning to set, casting a soft golden glow over the garden. Anna wiped her tears with the back of her hand. Her eyes were still red, but her heart felt lighter. Leaning down toward Coca, she whispered with a weak yet sincere smile, "Thank you, Dad, for never leaving me." As if he understood every word, Coca gently licked her face, and Anna laughed, a joyful sound mixed with the last of her tears. She knew, somehow, that everything would be okay. She had found peace in the bond she shared with Coca, one that transcended what was seen and kept her father's memory alive in a way she had never expected. The evening sunlight bathed the church in a warm, golden hue, creating a perfect contrast with the gentle breeze brushing against Anna's face. Outside, the guests were eagerly waiting for the bride to make her way down the aisle, but Anna, standing behind the grand doors, needed a moment longer. She turned to her mother, who, with a shy but genuine smile, approached to tie a small red ribbon around Coca's neck. "Ready, sweetheart?" Iduna asked, her eyes shining with pride and emotion. Anna nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. It wasn't nerves about the commitment she was about to make, but a rush of emotions overwhelming her. This day was so meaningful, so full of symbols, that each step felt like a reminder of what she had lost and what she had gained. The moment was perfect. Coca, with his ribbon neatly tied and his watchful gaze, stood by her side as he had through all those years. Her protector, her confidant, her closest connection to her father. Now, he would walk with her on one of the most important days of her life, and Anna knew that in a way, her father was walking with her too. The church doors opened, and a soft melody filled the air. Anna took a deep breath and stepped forward, Coca proudly walking beside her. A murmur rose among the guests, which soon turned into warm smiles as they saw the bride with her faithful four-legged friend. They all knew the story of this special dog who had been her support through the hardest times. For Anna, Coca was far more than a dog. He was so much more. With each step she took toward the altar, Anna felt the weight of memories on her shoulders. Every step echoed the walks she'd shared with her father, the silent conversations they'd had in life. With every glance exchanged with Coca, it was as if he were telling her, "You're not alone. He's here with you." When they reached the altar, Anna paused for a brief second, a mixture of love and nostalgia swelling in her heart. She turned to Coca, whispering a quiet "thank you" that only he would understand. The dog, with his calm gaze and usual serenity, looked up at her, almost as if he knew this would be their last moment shared in that way. "Come on, Coca," Anna murmured, though a part of her felt that something was shifting. The ceremony began, and the priest spoke of love, commitment, and promises. Anna, holding her future husband's hand, listened intently, though a part of her heart remained with Coca, who sat nearby, watching the scene with an almost human attentiveness. When it came time to exchange vows, Anna felt a surge of emotions rush through her. It was the closing of one chapter and the start of something new. As she spoke the words that would seal their union, Anna felt a deep peace, like every wound from the past was healing right then and there. The scars were still there, but instead of pain, she now felt gratitude and love. For a brief moment, time seemed to stand still as her eyes met Coca's once again. There was something different in his gaze, a mix of pride, tenderness, and, surprisingly, something Anna had never seen before. "Farewell." Coca stood up slowly, as if he knew his work was done. He approached Anna one last time, softly nudging his head against her hand, the way her father used to in their quiet moments together. Anna smiled, not realizing that this would be the last time they shared a moment like this. After a few seconds, Coca quietly walked toward the back of the church, moving without a sound, as if he didn't want to disrupt the magic of the moment. Anna didn't notice his departure, caught up in the joy of her wedding, surrounded by the love of family and friends, feeling as if everything was just as it should be. The wedding celebration continued with laughter, music, and the joy of friends and family mingling, offering congratulations to Anna and her new husband. The candlelight flickered gently in the night, creating a warm, cozy atmosphere in the garden. Anna, still wrapped in the magic of the day, smiled as she received hugs and well wishes, feeling surrounded by love and gratitude. Everything seemed perfect. Yet, in the middle of that happiness, a small worry began to gnaw at her. Coca was nowhere to be seen. Not long ago, she'd felt him close by, as always, but now, as she looked around, he was gone. At first, she thought he might be resting somewhere, but as the minutes passed, that little worry grew into something deeper. "Have you seen Coca?" she asked her mother, Iduna, who was chatting with some relatives. Iduna frowned, glancing around. "No, dear. I thought he was with you. I haven't seen him in a while." A pang of anxiety hit Anna. Coca never wandered off without reason. His protective nature always kept him close, especially during important moments like this. Something felt wrong. "I'm going to look for him," she told her husband, her voice laced with concern. Together, they began to search the garden, softly calling for Coca. Anna checked every corner, around the tables, near the church, but there was no sign of him. The emptiness in her chest grew, as if a part of her already knew Coca wasn't going to reappear. They searched for quite some time, but with each step, the echo of his name became more desperate. Her concern soon turned into a feeling of loss. Anna and her husband even stepped outside, checking the areas around the church and nearby streets, but there was still no trace of Coca. The night grew colder, and a deep unease settled over her with each passing minute. Iduna joined the search as well, but it was in vain. Finally, exhausted and with a heavy heart, Anna stopped. She looked at her husband and mother, both sharing the same worried expressions, but deep down, she knew. Coca had decided it was time to go. "I think that's enough," Anna said softly but firmly. She sat down on a wooden bench at the edge of the garden, gazing up at the dark sky full of stars. The cool night air brushed her face, and for a moment, all the noise from the party faded away. Iduna sat beside her without a word. They both understood Coca hadn't wandered off. He had said goodbye. Anna had felt it in that last look he gave her, in the way he'd glanced at her before leaving. There had been something in his eyes, a calm, a silent farewell she hadn't wanted to accept at the time. "He finished what he came here to do," Anna murmured, more to herself than to her mother. Coca had been there when she needed him most, helping her heal and cope with the loss of her father. And now, on the day she was beginning a new life, somehow, Coca had sensed it was his time to leave. Tears began to fall down her cheeks, but they weren't entirely sad tears. They were tears of acceptance, of love for the loyal friend who had been by her side in her darkest and happiest moments. Coca had been so much more than a dog. He had been her guide, her comfort, and, in a way, her purest connection to her father. "I miss him so much," she whispered, looking up at the sky. In her heart, she knew Coca was at peace, perhaps running free somewhere, and that her father was with him, watching over him as he had watched over her. Iduna, her own eyes brimming with tears, took her daughter's hand. "He'll always be with us," she said, her voice shaky. Coca, and her father too, lived on in every memory, in every corner of the life they had built together. The celebration continued in the background, but for Anna, the world seemed to have settled into a calm of its own. She sat quietly, gazing at the stars as time drifted by. She knew that, although she wouldn't see Coca running through the house or curling up beside her anymore, his presence would always remain with her, in her heart, in her memories. As the years went on, Anna built a new life with her husband. They moved into her childhood home with her mother, a place filled with memories. They had a son, a bright-eyed boy who was always laughing, as if he carried with him all the joy her father and Coca had left as a legacy. On quiet afternoons, as the sun set behind the mountains, Anna would sit in her father's old chair, now a place of comfort for her. She'd watch her son play in the yard and feel a warmth deep within her chest. She knew, somehow, that her father and Coca were still close, watching over her. Though she never forgot Coca, over time, the memories became softer, warmer. The thoughts no longer brought pain, but filled her with gratitude. Anna was certain that somewhere beyond this world, her father and Coca were together, waiting for the day when she could join them. Until then, she lived with the assurance that the love she had shared with them would always be with her. And on the stillest nights, as the wind whispered through the trees, Anna would close her eyes, and in her dreams, she saw them once more, walking together beneath a star-filled sky. This story captures Anna's emotional journey after the loss of her father, finding comfort and guidance in Coca, a golden retriever with an unexplainable connection to her dad. Coca's presence becomes a balm for Anna, helping her heal old wounds and reconnect with her father's legacy. Anna's journey is touching in its authenticity. Her grief, guilt, and search for peace are palpable. Coca's arrival, with his loyalty and seeming wisdom, invites us to reflect on the bonds that transcend the physical. The story's most profound lesson is one of unconditional love, and its power to heal. Representing paternal love, Coca accompanies Anna through her grief and guides her toward a new chapter in life. The story reminds us that love endures beyond death, appearing in unexpected ways and giving us the strength to move forward. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and share it. Leave a comment to tell us how it inspired you, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. May God bless you and guide you on every step of your journey.